Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook on at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show, and today I'm here with State Representative Collin Walke, who's the state representative in District 87 out in the northwest Oklahoma City area in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. How are you doing today?
Doing great. I appreciate you inviting me on again. I hope it's been doing well for you.
Yeah, the show's been well, and I've been well, so yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to chat about tonight?
Well, first thing I wanted to ask was what all has been going on since session began back in February.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't follow the legislature closely, February is typically a month where we do primarily committee work. So that's the first step in the legislative process. And I currently sit on the transportation committee. So I'll give you a highlight of a couple of bills that came out of there. One of which was a task force that would look at how best to tax EVs, electrical vehicles. Because the reality is in Oklahoma, if you buy a gallon of gas, a big chunk of your money, the taxes on that go towards roads and bridges. So if you're driving EVs and not paying gasoline tax, but using the roads, and especially with Ford and GM going total green by 2035, what are we going to do to supply our roads and bridges? So that bill came out of committee, but there was another bill that came out of the Appropriations and Budget Committee, which I also sit on, which will actually implement a fair tax on EVs pretty quickly. And I actually anticipate that one to pass. It appears as though a lot of the EV companies are behind it. They understand it. They're okay with it. And so then I also sit on the Civil and Judiciary Committee. And I don't think any real fun bills came out of that. I will tell you a controversial bill that came out of there is a bill that's been run by Representative Chris Kennedy, which would put the local Oklahoma City County Health Department, as well as the Tulsa City County Health Department, under the direct supervision of the state. And that's likely to be hearing on the House floor next week. And so those are the committees that I sit on, as well as pensions. I sit on that, but that one's always boring. It's just cleaning up language to make sure that we comply with federal law. Every once in a while, they run some legislation to try and mess with the pensions, but they haven't done that thus far. So, and then the House floor has been pretty slow, in part because of the ice storm that we had. But we also, just for some reason, weren't doing a lot of work on the floor, which will mean that last week, which was our first deadline week, and next week, which will be our last deadline week, it's going to be really busy. I wouldn't be surprised if we're up there until 8 or 9 most nights next week, if not later.
All right, cool. Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show were brought to you by Addie Sugar Shack, located at 1228 North Interstate Drive in Norman, Oklahoma. Norman's new shaved ice concept. They feature 45 flavor options plus unique snacks. They love the vibe. It's worth the drive. Cool. So what bills are you proposing this session?
Yeah, so most all of my bills died a painful death, except for one, and that's the most important bill. So we'll talk about the ones that I proposed this session. So first of all, 4 of them were bills that were carryovers from Representative Ben Loring up in Miami, Oklahoma. He had asked that I go ahead and see those through for him this session, and only one of those made it through. And it's a simple probate change in the statute, so nothing dramatic there. And then I proposed a bill that would help protect landowners' rights during eminent domain. That one died. And then let's see, those are 4 to 5. So those are the big ones. And then the one that did pass, and as a matter of fact, just passed last week, was HB 1602, which is the big Data Privacy Act bill. And I'll come back to that here in a second, because the other bill that is coming over from the Senate that I'm running is Ida's Law, which deals with murdered and missing Indigenous women. That passed out of the Senate. I'll be running it on the House side. But the big one is HB 1602. And have you followed along with any of that, Gregory?
Not too closely. Could you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you the backstory about why this bill is so important, and then I'll tell you what this bill does, and I'll also tell you about the shenanigans of the week. So the backstory is, a lot of people here probably know that their data is being tracked. What they don't know and don't appreciate is the extent to which it's being tracked and bought and sold on a completely unregulated market. So, for example, data brokerage companies buy and sell lists of rape survivors. Data brokerage companies buy and sell lists of alcoholics. One data brokerage company alone has more than 1,500 data points on over 200 million Americans. Disney World, Disneyland, your kids ever go there, you know, their family ever goes there, they not only take adult age, names, occupations, genders, but they also take children's names, ages, and genders. And Disney shares its information with Honda, you know, multiple other companies. But it's like, well, what does Honda have to do with Disney World, right? If you wear biometric information, they know your moods, they know your body temperatures. I mean, and they manipulate you with this information. And I can go through a whole litany of examples of that. They also listen to you, literally listen to you, like, for example, without you even knowing it. So if you own a Samsung Smart TV, for example, unless you read their privacy policy, you wouldn't know that if you say intimate information around it, it is being shared with third parties. And so this industry has been built up over the last 20 years where technology has gotten far ahead of regulation. And it's resulted in us being exploited and manipulated. I mean, just look at the echo chambers that you have on Facebook, the automatic ads, the automatic suggestions, to where people get these tunnels that they can't get out of. And so California a few years ago proposed, well, even before that, there was the GDPR, which is the German consumer privacy law. And basically what it says is that you have a right to be forgotten, right? That's, a lot of people have heard of that. You have a right to request what information data companies have on you, and you have a right to opt in. And this is crucial. The right to opt in means that, for example, if you've ever, opened Google Maps and it says, "Can we track you? Can we know your location?" That's opting in. Everything is set up right now with opt out, which means that you do probably have an ability to go and have some of your information deleted if certain companies abide by those policies. The funny thing is, though, is that even if companies tell you you have the ability to opt out, sometimes you can't. For example, Verizon was fined just a few years ago by the FTC to the tune of millions of dollars because they told consumers that they could opt out of being tracked, and they couldn't. So California just a few years ago followed the GDPR and basically did the same thing, except left opt out, which means you still have the right to ask Facebook, what information do you have on me? Delete my information. You don't have a total right to be forgotten, but you have a right for them to delete your information. And then you have the right to opt out of them tracking you or selling your information. There's a lot of practical problems with that, though. So then Virginia just passed an opt-out law as well. So there's now 2 opt-out law books on the nation. Well, Oklahoma would be the 3rd data privacy state in the nation, but ours would be opt-in. Ours would be the first one in the country. And the tech companies hate this. And AT&T has been the worst. They've been lobbying against this so hard and just pulling shenanigans. I mean, I felt like I was in a battle last week with my brother, Representative West, on this bill, because they were doing everything that they could to kill it, because they know that if it's opt-in, less people are likely to say, yes, you can track me. Yes, you can sell my data. And so that's been a lot of fun. It passed off the House. First, it passed out of committee 7-0. And then it passed off the House floor 85-11. And so they're getting real nervous about this bill becoming law.
That's cool. Yeah, I listened to the podcast you two did a couple of weeks ago about it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And
it's
you know, the thing is that this is one of those things that it's hard for me to think of issues nationwide that are more important than data privacy. Because, so for example, the New York Times did a story just a few weeks ago of some data that they obtained from a data brokerage company showing certain cell phone tracking going on at the Capitol on January 6th when it was
mhm,
stormed. And, on the one hand, you can say, well, I'm glad somebody can find out where they are, which law enforcement has that ability in any
yeah,
event. But setting that issue aside, it's also scary because you can tell elevations and all kinds of things. And if you just think about it as an individual, do you want some third party that you don't know to know where you are at this very moment? Probably not.
yeah,
And the fact that we've let this go unregulated is just utterly terrifying to me.
yeah. It's pretty interesting stuff that people don't really think about too much.
Yeah,
So yeah, I hope that bill passes.
yeah.
And gets signed into law. It's much needed. Um, but yeah. Are there any other things that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I anticipate next week there's going to be some controversial bills that come to the House floor. We've already had several. It's kind of an annual event to see which crazy ones actually make it to the House floor. There's one bill that we thought we had killed last week. I think it's HB 1888, and it prohibits any public body from teaching gender and sex diversity training. And we thought that we had it killed last week because the way it was written, first of all, it was very poorly written. But secondly, it would really jeopardize a lot of state funding that we get from the federal government.
Yeah.
And since Oklahoma is one of those states that receives more than it pays in, we're not one of those that wants to lose our federal funding too quickly. Unfortunately, I think for whatever reason that bill's going to come back next week. So anybody that's listening to this, please go out and reach to your representatives to kill that bill because it's a sad bill. But other than that, I can't think of any other bills that are really coming up. We always have marijuana bills in legislation, which it's always interesting to see who opposes that and who's in favor of it. And so if anybody has positions on those one way or the other, please feel free to reach out to your representatives because we always want to do what our constituents want on those issues because we know that it was implemented by a vote of the people. And so we really take that seriously. What about you? What do you want to talk about?
That's pretty much it. Um, that's all I could really think about. Just wanted to get some information from you.
Yeah. Well, the next week will be a lot of floor activity, and then after that, we'll go back to committee work. So, if you want to follow along and find out about HB 1602 as it goes along, just let me know, and I'll be sure to update you.
Right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, Gregory.
You're welcome. Thank you.